Whether you want more innovation more easily, you are feeling burnt out or overwhelmed, or you simply know that something isn't quite the way you know it can be, you are not alone. I hear the same from leaders every day. On Uncommon Leadership, we explore aligning personal fulfillment with business success, creating authentic teams, and cultivating the resilience, adaptability, and ease necessary to move beyond simply surviving today's challenges into thriving. I'm Michael Hunter with Uncommon Teams, and today we'll uncover fresh insights into what it means to lead today. And joining me is Gila Lee Adato. Gila is an attorney with a deep corporate and regulatory background who works at the intersection of artificial intelligence, leadership, and human potential. She hosts a weekly FM radio show on artificial intelligence, created the AI for Leaders Summit series, and is the force behind a growing movement using AI to break old constructs, elevate identity, and expand what's possible for leaders. And I will be in one of her upcoming summits, so watch out for that. Welcome, Gila.
Thank you so much, Michael. I am so happy to be here with you.
I am really excited for our conversation today. When did you first recognize that integrating your whole self, bringing that into everything that you do, might be a valuable approach?
So I think it was something that was tugging at me for a very long time, and I was not wanting to face it. But it was at the last corporate job that I had that it really finally was like one of those things that I just could no longer deny. Uh, and it was a combination of, I guess, lots of, growing up, life experiences. I was a couple of years post cancer, and I had really just seen a lot of changes in my life, in my inner feelings, and just with that last job and a few things that other things that happened there, I realized that it was this kind of compartmentalizing an attempt to divide myself was never going to have me show up as my best self.
What was it about that experience that really brought that home to you?
And I think that it was starting to really understand and see the effort it took to filter, and like I said, compartmentalize, right? It was really just starting to feel like a lot more work than it was worth, you know? Uh, Lots of performing. I am not a performer, really. And it just started to feel like this is so hard. And like, why am I making it so hard? And if I can't be, myself, then what am I doing here? And it's funny. I When I say that, I don't mean, you know, I I still feel like I need to bring my best self to certain experiences, right? Like I wouldn't come to work and tell every, I don't know, issue I'm having and that's not relevant. But this was deeper, deeper than that. It was like really feeling like these parts of me I just was not being truthful about, right? It was like hiding this, even though there's nothing to be ashamed of, but these like ideas of I'm really, obsessed with leadership and transformation and like these being in masterminds. And when it just, I don't know, somehow felt like those, even though they were great for growth, like, I don't know, like people wanted to be, you know, not not talk about those things, and just started to feel really hard.
I don't want to talk about this. There's, I don't feel safe talking about this. It doesn't feel appropriate to talk about this. And all of those are fine. What I find things start to become problematic is I cannot talk about this because if it's not, as you say, it's not that we have to bring all of the everything in until we don't have to make all parts of our lives Facebook and where we talk about everything that's going on everywhere. But we hopefully always feel comfortable talking about what's going on in ways that we feel are appropriate. So if we're not able to tell the people we're working with that I'm going through a really rough time right now, then they just think like we're not showing up, but maybe we're looking for a new job, or they start making up stories about what's going on. And maybe they get grumpy at us because we're not pulling our weight or doing the amount of work that we used to be able to. And so it becomes really problematic. As you started being more able to bring these parts in and talk about them in ways that fit for you into those contexts, what shifted for you?
So something you said, I'm going to circle back to because it's very interesting. But I think what shifted for me was I started to really allow myself to see that I was truly unhappy in what I was doing. No matter, how many ways I tried to slice and dice it, it just felt so um, so purposeless, you know, and that was a real struggle for me. So I could, before that, I could tell myself this is affording me a great lifestyle. I'm able to take care of my children. I'm able, and I could reframe and reframe. But the more I really allowed myself to look and see that this, like I said, this kind of compartmentalization, and I saw that I was doing great work on the side, outside. I felt that everything I was doing that had purpose was separate. The more I and the more I just started to say this just doesn't make sense. It can't be that the only way for me to provide and to excel is through something that feels so purposeless to me, like just
Mm-hmm.
some high level paper pusher, and yeah. So that's what started to shift as I really started to uh, look more honestly.
How
Yeah.
much were you able then to adjust the work that you were doing to fit your new frame? And how much did you just start looking for new work?
I really struggled to have the work fit the frame. Period. It really. So I was a regulatory and compliance specialist in the last job was a pretty big consulting shop, and I worked with these big companies, and the thing that I always loved the most was the people that I was with. Right? It was like that was the best part. I was with these really smart, really uh, interesting people, but the work we were doing just continued to feel like like really kind of purposeless. And
Mm-hmm.
I kept trying to bring, some different perspective, or like at this last shop that I was at, stepping in to take different roles that I thought would be great for the morale of the people around me who I saw, like myself, struggling with this. And there was so much resistance to anything, it felt like, but being um, a bot that I just, yeah, it just got more and more untenable, until finally I did just say, okay, I need to. It's scary to think, but it's time for a full change.
Right.
Yeah.
As as you were choosing your next gig, how did you filter through all the possibilities to understand which things were going to fit your new frame versus which were not going to fit well enough?
Well, I knew for a long time that I had wanted to do something, like I said, that felt meaningful. And I also always had this bug about doing something for myself and creating something. And so I was pretty clear that I did not want to go and get another, corporate job like the one I had. Uh, so that was evident to me. But and it felt like a lot of people were like trying to push me in more of the same. It felt, I guess, comfortable to other people, and honestly, I really just kind of took this crazy leap, which I still look at and see this is still a little bit crazy that I'm still pushing myself in this direction of um, entrepreneurism and whatever it is without because it's a whole different game, right? I'm finding whole different game, and there are still gaps in what I really feel equipped for, and some of them I know are just skills or figuring it out. So uh, I think I just keep pushing myself to figure it out, even though it looks crazy from an outsider perspective. I don't know if that really makes sense as I say it out loud. But yeah,
It makes sense to me, at least, because it mirrors a lot of my own experience. The knowing something needs to change, knowing that where you are is not able to contain the change and the change isn't going to fit within, and going off to something completely new, having no idea what we're doing. Yeah, 100%.
hmm hmm
As you contemplated going off on this path, how did you know that you had the resilience and adaptability to pull it off?
I'm not sure if I really did know. I'm not sure I still know, but I just somehow keep doing the thing. I think it's more this like knowing that the idea of going back to or what feels like backwards is just not an option, and somehow I keep myself in this crazy game, and it's amazing the things that show up when I do. So I I think there have been plenty of moments where I'm like I'm not so sure, but but I keep taking the steps, and so yeah. I wish I could say, oh, like I the what I knew was there has to be a better way. I don't know what that is. I'm not sure, and I knew that the only person that could really figure it out for me was me. I guess it felt like when I look back and I look at the moments where I allowed myself to take the advice of someone else that seemed more logical but didn't feel right, that those every one of those were the ones that looking back I regretted, and every one of the ones that felt like I know everybody looking at me is saying she's absolutely nuts, and I don't, maybe it doesn't fit the frame. um, but somehow those are the ones that even if they didn't work out, and often they didn't as I expected, they always worked out in some kind of beautiful expansive way, right? So I just keep kind of moving in that direction and convincing myself that uh, breaking old constructs, right, and not buying into, what other people tell me is the way is way better for me. You know.
This is one of the hardest parts of leading is understanding the difference between all the beliefs that have been piled onto us versus the beliefs that we have brought on ourselves versus the beliefs that are actually ours, and then divesting ourselves of all the other stuff so that all that's left is ours.
Mhm.
What are
Yes.
the signals that help you realize which one of these some urge or belief is?
So this, I think, for me, has been maybe the most interesting piece of this journey, uh, because I really started to realize that uh, when I, first of all, that the guiding voice, the one that really leads me down the path that is right for me, is much quieter than the one that tells me to do the things that are are not so good, right? So in a transformational training I did, and really changed the trajectory of my life. We call that, that like self saboteur, the nerd. And at one point, I named my nerd Candy because I really believe like it's so tempting and appealing, but that like she's going to rot your teeth and she's not just not good for you, kind of thing. So that was one thing that really starting to understand, because at first it made no sense to me. If it's really right, why would it be so much quieter and so much harder to hear? Like seems, and I think I've learned that so much is counterintuitive. Even these ideas that I started to understand, that when that, for like that fear, or like you know alarm bells are going off, a lot of times actually it's the signal to move forward and not to stop. And I used to be so afraid of that discomfort and take it as a sign of like, oh, this is where I have to stop. But when I started to realize, I tell people like we live in the Amazon age, but not the Amazon age where like you're going to get eaten by a tiger. It's like every creature comfort is just here at the drop of a hat. And so we really like, but our biology is still designed for like a tiger is going to come out and eat you. So when I really started to look, when those feelings came up and said, oh, well, yeah, this feels really scary for whatever reason, or really like I like feel it, but I look around and like, I'm sitting in my beautiful home, and nothing scary is really going to happen. So starting to really look at those things, and how our body lies in those ways, or and starting to be okay with that, that was really pivotal for me.
How how are you taking all of these experiences into helping other people feel safe and empowered to bring their unique talents into everything that they do?
So a big thing that I do in my life with my kids, and in life period, is encouraging people to get in touch with really what's under for them, what feels right and what doesn't feel right, and stop being so concerned about how someone else is going to take that. If you're not doing something to harm someone, or just like, and even telling people in conversations, it's okay, like it's okay that I don't love this idea, or it's okay that you know, I would much rather you do X, but like it's not my life. So I really bring that explicitly into conversations and interactions with people. And I think that makes a big difference for people to start to themselves like see and explore it. So even when it's hard to say it, like I really, this does not work for me, at all, but it's also not about me. So, do, and I will figure out myself. I think bringing those interactions, like for an example, to be less abstract, like I was working with an assistant, and you know, it was very evident to me that it it, it was it was a moment where there was opportunity for growth, right? Like, and I could not give her the same at that moment, opportunity to grow. So like this was going to be a really hard change for me. but I was the one who came to her and said, okay, let's be real, and just go and do it, and those kinds of things, putting my money where my mouth is when I'm in a situation. I think that makes a big difference. And the other thing is having being willing to have people see that when I know I've made a mistake or gone off course or whatever it is, coming and saying, okay, I'm not going to try and fix this alone, or I'm not going to try and pretend like this didn't happen. Let's, let's address it. And I think that's a big thing, that I really believe that uh, someone's true character and what's important is seeing them when they've fallen, not when, everything looks like the Facebook, post kind of thing, to reference back what you said before.
How do you help them understand for themselves what you're understanding for yourself of how to discern that difference between this is me versus this is other people?
I encourage people a lot to talk less to lots of people about some of these things. I know that one of the mistakes not mistakes, it was a growing process. But I think when I was earlier in my journey and younger, I looked outside for a lot of opinions and validation uh, and I guess opinions, really, right? And there were many things where I realized the more opinions, the more confused I got, right? So I really talk to people about the fact that in most cases, you know, those opinions are only going to confuse. And even if people love you, maybe even more so because they love you tremendously, they will let their own fear or, you know, experience knock you off course. So I really encourage people to keep things closer to the vest a lot. Although I say that it's not like I'm an open book, so that sounds very contradictory. But I'm an open book, but also, if I don't know, doing something that feels really right, but I know that other people are going to think I'm really crazy, I wait until it's done to share. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It can be useful sometimes to ask other people for their experiences of us in a certain situation, to gather that data of how other people have experienced us when we were super off course or super on course, for example. And we still have to keep in mind for ourselves that this is their experience, which may be colored a little or a whole lot with their belief system, which may be colored a little or a whole lot by a lot of other people's beliefs. And so it's not that the fact that they say, give us a particular story of a particular time when they've experienced us being super on track, that means we were actually 100% on track or even on track at all. This is when they experienced what on track feels to them. And so we need to not just take that at face value, but compare that against other people's experiences and feel back for ourselves in that moment. How did I feel? They experienced me being super on track. Did I feel like I was super on track? And it's not that you were not on track. It's there's if there's any dissension between what you feel and what they were experiencing, then that's a whole lot of data of there was things in the way.
Yes, for sure. And I think it's interesting also, you talking about asking them for their experience of you versus their experience or thoughts about a certain scenario or move that you should make, right? Or step that you should take. Those are very different things. And I know,
Yes,
yeah, yeah, I think that's an important distinction.
it really is. I'm thinking about starting my own business. What do you think? That's much more likely to bring all of their fears, anxieties, beliefs about how things should or shouldn't be done, filtered through lots of other people's fears and anxieties over how things should and shouldn't be done. And so be a very bias towards what they feel would be
Mhm.
safe for them, probably, not even for you.
Mhm.
Versus a question like, won't you please tell me a couple stories of a time when you felt I was really having an impact on the world that resonated with you? Won't you please tell me some stories of times when the impact I had on you, you really appreciated? 'Cause now you're asking about their subjective experience as a result of their interaction with you, and it's much more likely to reduce the impact of all those filters that might be in the way.
It's interesting. And I think many people are looking back, those times where I think I was, asking way too much from the peanut gallery. Uh, you know, it was more often about a decision or, versus how do you experience me? What do you see as my strengths or my weaknesses or, right? And I think those asks would have been far more powerful and worthwhile for me than let me get so many opinions on things, which is funny because uh, looking at looking at my first marriage, I know I used to say a lot like this marriage is not a democracy. Stop, like let's have these conversations here. But uh, somewhere I also, when it came to myself and decisions, would ask too much. But then I started to see it.
And the part of what you started to see was that when you were asking for advice on decisions, that meant there was something about the decision that you didn't understand or you didn't want to face up to.
I think it would depend on the scenario, but oftentimes it was simply uh, I wasn't willing to trust myself enough, right, to just make a call, or maybe I was looking to give myself some kind of out later if it didn't work out, right, the way I wanted. But when I started to really understand that, like, if I make my call and things work out in a way that I don't anticipate, which usually is how life goes, right? We have this thought that we're going to script it out, and like those are the things we can't control generally. But really, when I started to understand that if I make the choice, I make my choice, I will figure out and not navigate whatever it is. And I had um, someone who used to say to me, very wise woman, would say, "It's the right choice because it's the choice you made." Period, right? And that when we have this thing in our mind that, oh, I should have made the other choice, well, that's also presuming like that choice would have turned out the way you are pretending it would, and you really don't know. So that was like very freeing when she would always just say, like, just choose, and like whichever you choose, it's the right choice because it's the one you made, period. That was really freeing for me. But I think it was a lack of self trust. at that point.
That is a super freeing way to think about that. That you're right. When we say we should, I should have, we are telling ourselves that we were wrong because we somehow magically know that that other choice would have worked out better. When what
Right,
we're
right.
really saying
Yeah.
is there are parts of how this worked out that I'm not so excited about. And I really wish it could be different.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
And if we can allow ourselves to realize that, then suddenly we have all this opportunity to identify, well, what are the things I wish had turned out differently? And what steps can I take now to shift those more in the direction I want them to go?
Hmm. Very much so. Very much so.
So, as you're going through this journey with your life and your business, and then helping your clients and other people you work with to do this in their life and their business, what are you finding are the business justifications for doing all of this work?
The business justifications for doing help.
For doing all this hard, squishy people, I gotta listen to myself and understand who I am versus everything else and learn how to filter all that
Ah,
other stuff away or even let it go so I don't have to spend energy filtering it anymore and all this kind of stuff that we've been talking about today.
gotcha. Well, a couple of things. Number one, I think that most of us were brought up to with a set of rules for a world that just doesn't exist, right? Like things are very different than when I was growing up and what the assumption the world how the world would work. So, you know, the I believe that the only way to, have a real shot at at navigating where we are, since we now realize that there is no real like playbook in a lot of ways, is to get in touch with the that inner knowing, because I think in a way it's like really all we have right now, and um, and it really works. So, I think having people start to understand that operating from these like false sets of beliefs or old antiquated ways of thinking is bound to be problematic. And so, what's the alternative, right? So that tends to I think help people start to see it, and in a lot of ways, it's very empowering. Really to understand that that there's nobody like who's ordained with all of the answers or knows, or and nobody really can see into the future, but somehow we really do all have that inner knowing and guidance. uh, and I think most people really do understand that that is a real thing. So uh, that's the justification, like what's the alternative. Not so funny.
Indeed, of being miserable and unhappy with our choices all the time. Like we are already, so why not try something different?
E- exactly, exactly, like that's not a win. So like take a shot at a real win. And
And on
even
the
if
other
it
side
doesn't
of
work
that,
out the way you want, yeah, go ahead, you go.
oh, go ahead.
Uh, Okay, so I was that even if it doesn't work out the way you want, you still are winning by not continuing to put yourself, in a place that you're unhappy. So that's a win.
Yes. And On the other side of that is the amazing possibility that maybe you could start actually being happy with every choice that you make, knowing that it was, as you said, the best choice, regardless of how things turn out. And that it's not our fault the way things turn out, that that's just the way that what happened. And the only control we have over the situation is what we choose to do and how we choose to feel about it.
Yeah. Yeah. What's that saying? Life is, 20% what happens to you and 80% how you respond to it, or something like that. That's a big one.
Yes, it really is. Which is a great lead into my next question. How are you helping people find their way through all the change, uncertainty, and overwhelm that seems to be all over life these days?
Yeah, I love this one. So it goes back to some of the things that we already talked about, right? Really kind of quieting all of the noise outside and being willing to trust your inner knowing. And then the other piece is and questioning where did these beliefs or thoughts or whatever come from, and do they still apply today, and all of that. And then the other piece is really supporting people with the understanding that we live in this time where AI is a thing, and there's so much that we can systematize and automate and like lift off of our plate, right? And that when we do that, and um, it can free up so much. So it's kind of this like touch and tech kind of approach that I take with people, right? Like the touch meaning yourself, and really getting in touch with yourself, and then the tech, using it in ways that is um, not designed to have you do 100 times more of the things you hate, right? Or hustle or grind more, but really to support you in um, freeing yourself where you can, and giving yourself more space. So that's that's my goal right now.
So you're helping helping people find their own way to play and inhabit that, which may involve turning a whole lot of stuff over to other people, over technology, so that they can focus on what they really love doing.
Yes, very much so. And even in a lot of cases, just deleting a lot of what we think has to be done, right? I mean, there's so much that so many of us do that when you look back, it's really meaningless and not really making a difference. So yeah, looking at all of that, and being sovereign over our choices.
Which can be really scary because that means that we can't blame someone else for how things come turn out, and we have to accept that no one really has control over how things turn out.
Which really is the real stuff at the end of the day anyway, right? Like I was saying before, like, I don't know, there's so many of these things that we operate under, like I don't know, there's someone ordained with the answers. There's not, or that certain rules uh, are correct. We see that that's like not the case. So yeah, I don't know. I say to a lot of people, nobody gets out of this game alive, and nobody gets out unscathed. So like just go with go with your gut and do the thing.
Dive in, have some experiences, and make friends with the alligators and piranhas.
Yeah,
So, Gila,
yeah.
for people who would
Mm.
like to connect with you to get your assistance in doing this for themselves, to learn more about your story and how that might help them with theirs, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
So you can find me on socials at Global AI, which is spelled Glowbal AI, and that's by design. The global is for generating light on the world, the glow in global. So on socials or Gila at globalai.com, which is GILA, GILA at globalai.com.
And we'll have those links
And
in
you
our
can
show
listen to me
notes.
weekly. Great, thank you. Yes, and I was going to say you can listen to me weekly on 107.1 FM or 99.9 HD4, which is in most of Florida, South Florida.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
What would you like to leave our audience with today, Gila?
Well, thank you. And then I think everybody should read your book. That is something I will leave them with. And it speaks to a lot of the things that I really do, encourage people uh, to get clear on, which is getting in touch with themselves and navigating through life without the noise, and just understanding that we are in a day and age that nobody was prepared for, nobody knows, and to just follow your gut and have some fun along the way and read your book.
Thank you. Which will be out February
I mean
24th.
it. So exciting.
Thank you, Gila, for your time today. I've enjoyed our conversation.
Me too. Thank you, Michael.
And thank you, audience, for joining us today. Gila and I would love to know, what is your gut telling you needs to change? And what are you going to play with to do that today? Thank you and have a great
Love
day.
it.